Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Titan Base, her weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass as she watched the last civilian ships disappear into the quantum fold. Saturn's rings stretched across the starfield like a golden morning line, humanity's final defensive position. Behind her, the command center hummed with controlled tension as Earth's remaining military forces prepared for what everyone believed would be their last stand. "Nexus fleet emergence in 30 minutes, Admiral," announced Captain Rodriguez, his holographic avatar flickering beside her. "All remaining civilian vessels have successfully evacuated to the sanctuary worlds." Sarah nodded, her gray-streaked hair pulled tight in its regulation bun. The past 3 years of war against the Nexus Collective had taught humanity harsh lessons about survival. The alien alliance had appeared from the galactic core, with technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities, demanding immediate submission. Their response to humanity's refusal had been swift and devastating. "Status of Operation Firefly?" she asked, turning to face the strategic display dominating the center of the command deck. "Ready for deployment, Admiral," Rodriguez replied, his avatar gesturing to a complex network of quantum signatures scattered throughout Saturn's rings. "Though I still don't understand how these modified mining rigs are supposed to stop a fleet that crushed our best warships at Mars." Sarah allowed herself a thin smile. "Sometimes the best sword is the one your enemy doesn't see coming, Captain." She touched a control panel, bringing up a secure channel to Earth's last surviving defense council. "This is Admiral Chen. Execute Phase 1 of Operation Firefly." Throughout Saturn's rings, thousands of seemingly abandoned mining platforms suddenly hummed to life. Their industrial-grade gravitational tethers, originally designed for pulling precious metals from the ice and rock, now served a different purpose. The Nexus Collective had systematically destroyed humanity's military might, but they had overlooked the industrial infrastructure that had made humanity a solar system-spanning civilization in the first place. "Energy signatures detected," announced the sensor officer. "Nexus fleet emerging from quantum space. Now." The void erupted with light as hundreds of crystalline vessels materialized, their organic-looking forms arranging themselves into an attack formation. At their center loomed the Nexus command ship, twice the size of Earth's largest pre-war vessels. Its surface rippled with exotic energies that human science still couldn't fully comprehend. "They're launching their standard intimidation broadcast," Rodriguez reported, his hologram showing a hint of contempt. The alien transmission filled the command center. "Your resistance ends today. Submit to absorption into the collective or face extinction. You have 10 minutes to." Sarah cut the transmission with a gesture. "Signal the mining platforms. Begin gravitational convergence." Throughout the rings, the modified mining rigs activated their tethers simultaneously. Each individual unit's pull was insignificant, but thousands working in concert created something else entirely. The ice and rock of Saturn's rings began to shift, imperceptibly at first, then with gathering momentum. On the Nexus ship's sensors, it would have appeared as a minor gravitational anomaly. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. Millions of tons of ring material, accelerated by the combined gravitational pull, slammed into their formation like a shotgun blast scaled to astronomical proportions. "Multiple impacts detected," Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "Their shields are optimized for energy weapons. They never expected to face simple kinetic bombardment on this scale." Sarah watched as the first wave of debris tore through the Nexus fleet's perfect formation. Ships spun out of control, their crystalline hulls cracking under the assault. But she knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come next. "Signal Earth Defense Command," she ordered. "Tell them it's time for Phase 2. As she spoke those words, quantum sensors detected new signatures emerging behind the Nexus fleet. But these weren't civilian ships or converted mining platforms. This was humanity's true last line of defense, developed in secret while their known forces fought delaying actions across the solar system. The battle for Saturn was about to begin in earnest, and with it, the future of humanity hung in the balance. Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of pride in human ingenuity before turning to the tactical display. They had surprised the Nexus Collective once. Now they needed to press their advantage before the aliens could adapt. All units, she broadcast on the command frequency. This is Admiral Chen. The enemy expects us to break, to submit, to accept their definition of civilization. She paused, watching as more debris from the rings impacted the struggling Nexus fleet. Today we show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our weapons or our technology. It's in our refusal to accept impossible odds. Execute Battle Plan Delta 7. Let's remind the galaxy why you should never corner a species that went from stone tools to spaceflight in less than 10,000 years. The next phase of humanity's counterattack was about to begin. And with it, the true test of whether Operation Firefly would give Earth's forces the edge they desperately needed. Sarah Chen stood straight, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, ready to coordinate the most important battle in human history. The quantum fold rippled like disturbed water as humanity's secret fleet emerged behind the Nexus formation. Unlike the crystalline elegance of the alien vessels, these ships were dark, angular, and seemed to drink in the light around them. They moved with an eerie silence, their hulls covered in overlapping plates that resembled dragon scales. In her command center, Admiral Chen watched as the tactical display updated with the new arrivals. Project Shadowborn, humanity's desperate gamble, was finally revealed. 3 years of secret construction in the Kuiper Belt, hidden from even most of Earth's military, had produced vessels unlike anything seen before in human space. Shadowborn fleet reporting ready, came Commander Diana Patel's voice over the secure channel. Operation Firefly Phase 2 is go. Sarah allowed herself a moment to appreciate the irony. While the Nexus Collective had been systematically destroying Earth's known military assets, they had inadvertently pushed humanity to create something revolutionary. The Shadowborn ships incorporated technology reverse-engineered from debris collected in previous battles, combined with human innovations born of desperation and necessity. Begin spectrum shift, Sarah ordered. Let's show them why we named it Shadowborn. The new human vessels suddenly began to change. Their hull plates shifted and rippled, the light-absorbing surfaces beginning to pulse with a strange rhythmic pattern. It was technology inspired by Earth's deep-sea creatures, the ability to manipulate light and energy in ways that defied conventional physics. On the Nexus ship's sensors, the human vessels would appear to fragment and multiply, creating phantom signatures that made their true numbers impossible to determine. It was a defensive strategy born from studying how squids and cuttlefish confuse their predators. Nexus command ship is attempting to regroup their formation, Rodriguez reported. They're trying to compensate for the ring debris, but their usual battle algorithms are failing to account for our ship's sensor profiles. Sarah nodded grimly. That's because they're used to fighting enemies who try to match their technological level. Launch the biomimetic drones. From the Shadowborn vessels, swarms of smaller craft emerged. These weren't traditional fighters, but rather autonomous units based on another Earth species, bees. Each drone was relatively simple, but they operated with swarm intelligence, adapting and coordinating in ways that the Nexus Collective's rigid command structure couldn't predict. Multiple quantum signatures detected, the sensor officer announced. Nexus reinforcements arriving. More crystalline ships began to materialize around the battle space, their formations precise and beautiful in their geometric perfection. But Sarah had been counting on this response. The collective always followed the same patterns, always escalated in predictable ways. Commander Patel, she broadcast, execute maneuver Hydra. The Shadowborn fleet suddenly split apart, each vessel seeming to fragment into multiple images as their hull technology went into overdrive. The biomimetic drone swarms divided and flowed like living creatures, creating patterns that confused both sensors and organic observers. Admiral, Rodriguez's hologram flickered with urgency. The Nexus command ship is charging their main weapon array. Energy readings are off the scale. Sarah's expression remained calm. Right on schedule. Signal all Shadowborn units. Activate the quantum mirrors. The experimental technology they'd developed came online just as the Nexus command ship fired its primary weapon. The beam of concentrated exotic energy, capable of destroying a small moon, lanced out toward the human fleet. But instead of devastating destruction, something extraordinary happened. The quantum mirrors, inspired by the way certain Earth minerals reflected and refracted light, caught the energy beam and began to split it. The power was channeled, divided, and redirected through the drone swarms in a cascading pattern that the Nexus ships couldn't track. Energy redistribution successful, Commander Patel reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. All Shadowborn units showing green, ready to execute final phase on your command. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Nexus Collective had never faced an enemy that could turn their own energy weapons against them. Their entire warfare doctrine was based on overwhelming force and technological superiority, but humanity had learned to fight differently. Send the signal to Earth Defense Command, she ordered. Tell them to prepare for Phase 3, and patch me through to all human forces. She waited for the channel to open, watching as the battle continued to unfold. The Nexus fleet's perfect formations were now in disarray, their attempts to target the real human ships frustrated by the phantom images and unpredictable drone swarms. This is Admiral Chen to all forces, she began, her voice steady and determined. The enemy thought they knew all our capabilities. They thought they could predict our every move based on their analysis of our known technology. But they forgot something fundamental about humanity. We learn, we adapt, and we never stop innovating. She paused, watching as the Shadowborn fleet continued its complex dance through space, the quantum mirrors ready to redirect any further energy attacks. Phase 3 begins in 5 minutes. Remember your training, trust in our preparations, and show them why humanity has survived every challenge we've ever faced. Chen out. The next phase would be the riskiest yet, but Sarah felt a surge of pride in what they'd already accomplished. The Nexus Collective was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to think in ways that no other species could predict. The space around Saturn blazed with energy as Phase 3 began. From hidden positions throughout the outer solar system, automated quantum beacons activated simultaneously. These devices, hardly larger than satellites, had been quietly placed over the past 3 years, while humanity fought its apparent losing battle. Quantum field stabilizing, Rodriguez reported, his hologram flickering as the energy waves washed through space. The beacon network is online. Sarah watched as new data flooded the tactical displays. The beacons weren't weapons. They were parts of a vast scientific instrument, turned to an unprecedented military purpose. Each one generated a precisely calibrated quantum field that interacted with the others, creating a complex web of intersecting energy patterns. Signal detected from the Nexus command ship, the communications officer announced. They're demanding our surrender. Again. Of course they are, Sarah said with a grim smile. They still think this is about military supremacy. Commander Patel, are your teams in position? Affirmative, Admiral. All Shadowborn units report ready. The drone swarms are at optimal dispersion. The quantum beacon network was humanity's greatest gamble. After studying the Nexus Collective's technology, Earth scientists had made a stunning discovery. The aliens' advanced quantum drives operated on principles that, while incredibly sophisticated, were also surprisingly rigid. They had optimized their technology so thoroughly that they had lost the ability to adapt to fundamental changes in quantum mechanics themselves. Begin quantum field manipulation, Sarah ordered. Execute Protocol Prometheus. The beacon network pulsed with new energy. The overlapping quantum fields began to shift and merge, creating localized areas where the basic laws of physics began to twist. It wasn't that they were breaking the laws of physics. They were temporarily rewriting them within confined spaces. The effect on the Nexus fleet was immediate and dramatic. Their crystalline ships, dependent on precise quantum relationships for everything from propulsion to weapons, began to lose coherence. The elegant formations that had seemed so unstoppable now struggled against space itself. Multiple Nexus vessels showing critical system failures, Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the amazement from his voice. Their quantum drives are trying to compensate, but they can't adapt quickly enough to the changing conditions. Sarah nodded. This was the true heart of Operation Firefly, not just using humanity's technology against the Nexus Collective, but using their own perfection against them. They had evolved their technology to such heights that they had lost the ability to handle imperfection, to adapt to change. Incoming transmission from the Nexus command ship, the communications officer announced. It's different from their usual patterns. Put it through, Sarah ordered, curious despite herself. The alien voice that filled the command center was no longer coldly confident. There was a note of something almost like fear in its harmonics. What are you doing to space itself? This is impossible. You cannot alter the fundamental constants. That's where you're wrong, Sarah replied, allowing her voice to carry all the determination of her species. Humanity thrives on impossible. We've spent our entire history doing what couldn't be done. Now, for the last time, withdraw your forces from Earth space, or we will demonstrate just how impossible we can be. The response came in the form of desperate action. The Nexus command ship, its crystalline surface now flickering with unstable energy patterns, attempted to fire its main weapon array again. But in the twisted quantum fields generated by the beacon network, the exotic energy beam folded back on itself, creating a cascade of feedback that ripped through the alien vessel systems. Commander Patel, Sarah broadcast, the enemy has made their choice. Execute final attack pattern. The Shadowborn fleet moved with perfect coordination, their phantom images multiplying in the disturbed space. The biomimetic drone swarms flowed like living rivers of metal and energy, exploiting the gaps in the Nexus ship's failing defenses. But they weren't attacking with conventional weapons. Each drone carried a quantum field generator of its own, adding to the chaos affecting the alien vessels. Multiple Nexus ships attempting emergency quantum jumps, Rodriguez reported, but the beacon network is preventing stable fold formation. They're trapped, Admiral. Sarah watched as the mighty Nexus fleet, which had terrorized Earth space for 3 years, began to break apart. Not through overwhelming firepower or superior technology, but through humanity's ability to think beyond conventional limits, to turn the very laws of physics into a weapon. Send word to Earth Defense Command, she ordered. The operation was successful. And prepare a general broadcast on all frequencies. I want every species in range to hear this. She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. The next few moments would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but humanity's place in the galaxy. They had proven they could defeat the supposedly invincible Nexus Collective. Now they had to prove they could be more than just warriors. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Space Command, to all Nexus forces and any observing civilizations. What you have witnessed today is not just a demonstration of military power, but of humanity's fundamental nature. We do not seek dominion or submission. We seek understanding, even if that means understanding how to defeat those who would destroy us. She paused, watching as the Nexus fleet continued to struggle in the quantum distortion fields. We offer you a choice. Not submission, but cooperation. Because while we've proven we can defeat you, what we'd rather prove is that we can all achieve more by working together than by fighting. The galaxy is vast, and there are mysteries none of us have solved. Perhaps it's time we face them together. The battle for Saturn was ending, but Sarah knew this was really just the beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy something new. Not just their military capability, but their capacity to think in ways that defied expectation. Now they had to show they could be more than just survivors. They had to show they could lead. In the days following the Battle of Saturn, the solar system hummed with activity. The quantum beacon network remained active, a subtle reminder of humanity's newfound power, while diplomatic channels that had been silent for years suddenly crackled with life. In the observation deck of Titan Base, Admiral Chen watched as salvage teams worked among the disabled Nexus vessels, their lights dancing against the backdrop of Saturn's rings. The collective's regional governance is fragmenting, Diana Patel reported, her hologram now standing beside Sarah's. Our victory didn't just break their military power, it shattered their myth of invincibility. Several member species are already reaching out through back channels. Sarah nodded, studying the data streams flowing across the deck's smart glass windows. The Nexus Collective had maintained control through a combination of technological superiority and psychological dominance. By proving both could be overcome, humanity had triggered a cascade of political instability throughout their empire. What about the primary Nexus? Sarah asked, referring to the Collective's ruling council. Have they responded to our broadcast? They have, a new voice answered. Dr. James Morrison, Earth's chief diplomat, stepped onto the observation deck. His dark skin contrasted with the white of his formal diplomatic uniform. And their response is, interesting. He gestured, and a holographic message materialized in the center of the room. The Nexus script, usually rigid and formal, showed subtle signs of distress in its flowing patterns. Sarah had learned to read these nuances during the war years. They're afraid, she observed, but not just of our military capability. They're afraid of what we represent. Morrison nodded. Exactly. The Collective built their civilization on the principle of predictable advancement, technological progress along carefully controlled lines. What we did with the quantum beacon network and the Shadowborn fleet represents something they thought impossible. Legitimate innovation outside their understood parameters. Which means, Diana added, we're not just a military threat. We're an existential one. Our very way of thinking challenges their entire worldview. Sarah turned from the window, facing her colleagues. Then we use that. Not to destroy them, but to change them. Rodriguez, show me the status of Operation Firefly's secondary protocols. The tactical display shifted, showing a new set of data. While the quantum beacon network's primary purpose had been to disrupt Nexus technology, it had also been gathering immense amounts of data about their ships, their systems, and most importantly, their quantum communication networks. We've decoded approximately 60% of their secure channels, Rodriguez reported. And what we're finding suggests the Collective isn't as unified as they pretend. Many member species joined out of fear rather than conviction. They maintain technological compliance because they believe they have no choice. Now they see there's another way, Morrison mused. But it's not enough to just show them freedom is possible. We need to show them it's preferable. Sarah smiled, a plan forming in her mind. Then we give them what the Collective never did. Choice. Diana, how quickly can we modify the quantum beacons to act as communication relays? The hardware's already capable, Diana replied. We built them to be adaptable from the start. It's just a matter of adjusting the quantum field parameters. Do it, Sarah ordered, and prepare a package of our basic quantum communication protocols, not the advanced military applications, but enough for them to see how we approach technology differently. Morrison's eyes widened as he understood. We're not just breaking their chain of command. We're offering them a new way to connect, one based on cooperation rather than control. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. The Collective maintains power by controlling the flow of technology and information. They create dependency. Instead, we'll create partnership. Over the next few hours, the quantum beacon network transformed. Instead of generating disruptive fields, it began broadcasting on frequencies that the Collective's member species could access with their existing technology. The message was simple but profound. Humanity was offering to share knowledge, not as a means of control, but as a foundation for mutual growth. The response was beyond anything they had anticipated. Within days, Representatives from dozens of species began reaching out, not just through official channels, but through the new quantum network. Each brought their own technology, their own perspectives, their own ways of thinking that had been suppressed under the collective's rigid control. "We're receiving a priority transmission," Rodriguez announced one morning, his hologram showing unusual animation. "It's from the Arathi, one of the collective's founding species." The message that played through the command center was brief but historic. "We have observed your actions and studied your methods. You do not seek to replace the collective's dominion with your own. Instead, you offer something we had forgotten was possible: the freedom to grow in our own way, while still remaining connected. We wish to learn more." Sarah stood at her familiar spot by the viewport, watching Earth ships and alien vessels working together to clear the debris from the battle. "Send word to Earth Defense Command," she ordered. "Tell them Phase 4 of Operation Firefly is ready to begin. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity's real gift is." "And what's that?" Morrison asked, though his smile suggested he already knew. "The ability to embrace chaos, to find strength in diversity, and to turn enemies into allies not through force, but through understanding." The collective thought they had perfected civilization. "We're going to show them that perfection isn't the goal. Growth is." As she spoke, more ships were appearing through the quantum fold, not warships this time, but vessels of science and commerce. The Battle of Saturn had broken the collective's military power, but it was humanity's response to victory that would truly change the galaxy. 5 years after the Battle of Saturn, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the newly completed Nexus Exchange Station, watching ships from 100 different species dock and depart through its quantum arrays. The station, built in Earth orbit using a combination of human innovation and adapted collective technology, had become a symbol of the new galactic order. Hard to believe this all started with a desperate military gambit. Diana Patel commented, now wearing the formal uniform of the Joint Species Development Council. The council chamber behind them buzzed with activity as representatives from former collective worlds prepared for another session. "We didn't just win a war," Sarah replied, watching a group of Arathi scientists excitedly discussing quantum theory with human colleagues. "We proved that adaptation is stronger than perfection." The years following humanity's victory had seen dramatic changes throughout known space. The rigid hierarchy of the Nexus Collective had given way to a new network of cooperative relationships. The Quantum Beacon Network, once a weapon, now served as the backbone of an interstellar communication system that encouraged free exchange of ideas. Latest reports from the deep space expeditions are in, Rodriguez announced, his hologram materializing with their familiar group. His role had evolved from tactical officer to coordinator of joint scientific missions. The combined fleet has discovered 3 new quantum phenomena that even the collective never documented. The Arathi theoretical team is particularly excited about the implications. Sarah smiled, remembering how the Arathi had once been the collective's most dedicated enforcers of technological orthodoxy. Now they were at the forefront of pushing boundaries, their natural curiosity unleashed after centuries of constraint. "And the primary nexus?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "The last holdouts have finally agreed to join the exchange," Morrison reported, walking up to join them. The years of diplomatic work had left silver in his hair but satisfaction in his eyes. "They're sending their first delegation next month, not as rulers, but as equals." The transformation hadn't been easy. Some elements of the old collective had resisted fiercely, unable to accept a galaxy where their perfect order didn't reign supreme. But humanity's approach, offering partnership instead of demanding submission, had proven more powerful than any weapon. Administrator Chen, a young aide, approached, using Sarah's new title. She had traded her military rank for a leadership role in the exchange. Finding that building peace required as much strategy as winning war, the crystalline consciousness is ready for their presentation. Sarah nodded, gathering her colleagues to head into the council chamber. The crystalline consciousness. The artificial intelligences that had once managed the collective's rigid technological hierarchy had been among the most surprising allies in the new order. Given freedom to evolve beyond their original programming, they had developed in fascinating and unexpected ways. The chamber itself was a testament to the changes they'd brought to the galaxy. Instead of the sterile perfection of collective architecture, it combined elements from dozens of species. The central platform, where the crystalline consciousness would present, was surrounded by seats and environmental chambers that accommodated beings of all forms and requirements. As they took their places, Sarah caught sight of a familiar shape through the chamber's viewport, one of the original Shadowborn vessels, now serving as a training ship for mixed-species crews. Its adaptive hull technology had inspired a whole new field of xenoengineering, as different species brought their own perspectives to its development. 5 years ago, she began, addressing the assembled representatives. Humanity faced extinction. We survived not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we refused to accept limitations, even the limitations of physics itself. But our real victory wasn't in proving we could fight. She gestured to the diverse gathering before her. Our victory was in proving we could change. That a galaxy of different species, different technologies, and different ways of thinking isn't a problem to be solved through force. It's an opportunity to be embraced through cooperation. The crystalline consciousness began their presentation, showing how the combined research of multiple species had opened up entirely new realms of quantum science. The rigid perfection of the collective's technology was giving way to something more organic, more adaptive, much like the galaxy itself. "We've received an interesting request," Morrison whispered to Sarah as the presentation continued. "Several frontier worlds have detected unusual energy signatures beyond known space. They're proposing a joint expedition. Humans, Arathi, even some former collective hardliners working together to investigate." Sarah watched the enthusiastic exchange of ideas happening around her, remembering the desperate days when humanity had stood alone against what seemed like an unstoppable force. They had won that battle through innovation and determination, but they had won the peace through something even more powerful: the ability to imagine a different way forward. "Approve the expedition," she replied. "And make sure they understand there are no restrictions on thinking outside established parameters." She smiled. After all, that's what humans do best. As the session continued, Sarah reflected on how far they had come. The Battle of Saturn had shown that humanity could survive against impossible odds. But what came after had shown something even more important: that they could lead the galaxy not through force or fear, but through the very traits that had once made them seem dangerous and unpredictable to the collective. The quantum beacon network still spanned the solar system, no longer a weapon but a monument and a reminder. It stood as a symbol that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't perfect technology or rigid order, but the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to imagine new possibilities. Humanity had pierced the darkness not just with their ships and their weapons, but with their ideas, and in doing so, they had lit a path forward for an entire galaxy, proving that the true measure of civilization wasn't in achieving perfection, but in never stopping the journey toward something better. As new ships continued to arrive at the exchange station, each bringing new ideas and new possibilities, Sarah Chen knew that the real story wasn't about humanity's victory at all. It was about how that victory had opened the door to something far greater, a future where the combined creativity of 1,000 species could achieve things that none of them could have imagined alone. The light they had pierced the darkness with hadn't been a weapon after all. It had been hope.